Hey there, homeschool reading community. Welcome to this Facebook Live all about the biggest mistakes that I made when teaching my kids how to read. I am so excited to be back here with you today for this Facebook Live, which is actually part 2 of the topic that we started talking about last week. Today I'm going to be talking about part 2. So last week we talked about confidence, and we talked about how when I was teaching my son to read, I didn't have confidence in myself and my ability to teach him, and about how that trickled down to him and his confidence as a reader. So if you missed that, definitely go back and check that out later. But today we're going to be diving into some of the more specifics and some of the things that I did that I wished I hadn't done, and some of the things that I didn't do that I wish that I had done. And I'm really excited to be sharing that with you. So I want to jump right in because I have a lot to say, and I'm hoping that I can fit this all into today's Facebook Live and that we don't have to make a part 3. Clearly, I had many mistakes that I made, and so I'm excited to share these with you so that you can learn from my mistakes and hopefully not make them as well. So I think one of the biggest mistakes that I made, maybe even bigger than what we talked about last week. I know last week I said was my biggest mistake, but this one really ranks up there, was just in the materials that I used. And so I want to kind of break that down a little bit because I feel like there are so many different ways to teach our kids how to read that are out there, and there are definitely some that work better than others. So I want to talk a little bit about my experience and also just about what's out there. So I brought my whiteboard. If you have not seen this or you've not been on a Facebook Live, this is like an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper whiteboard that I love to use when I am homeschooling my kids, and also when I'm here on Facebook Live so I can tell you about stuff. So I feel like the kinds of resources that exist to teach kids how to read kind of fit into basically 4 different categories. And so I want to share what I did, and also what I wished I had done. So we have 4 different categories. Hopefully you can see that. Let me know. This kind of gets glary sometimes in the light. It's actually sunny here today, which is not very often something that happens, but hopefully you can see this. Okay. So the first place that a lot of parents start, and I was fortunate I did not start here with my kids, but a lot of parents start here, and is a pretty common mistake that I see from parents, is sight words. And you can let me know if you started with sight words or if you know somebody that started with sight words. But a lot of us will start with sight words first. And I feel like this is a really common place to start because a lot of the resources that are out there tell us to start with this, right? And we need to teach our kid to read, and we want them to be able to read words, and so we get the flashcards. These were given to us by a friend who didn't know that I wouldn't use them, but so there's these like the cards that have the different words on them, and we have our kids memorize these, right? And so that's a place that a lot of parents start. We fortunately did not start there, but again, something that's really common that a lot of people do. And it's a problem because when we teach our kids that reading is a process of memorizing words off of cards, first of all, it's boring, and also that's not the way that kids' brains learn how to read. And I am going to resist the urge to jump up on that soapbox, but you can definitely, if you go back to the replays section in the guides, you can find, I'm sure, multiple rants about why that's not the way to teach our kids how to read. So, or if you want to put something in the comments, I can talk about that more deeply. But just enough to say for now, sight words are not the answer. But so here's where I did get stuck for a while, mostly as a teacher, because I think that there is a continuum of different resources, and there are a lot of varying opinions about how kids learn how to read. So ultimately, I think that the disagreement comes down to the difference between teaching our kids the skill of learning to read and teaching our kids to love reading, like the enjoyment of learning how to read. And I think there's a continuum here. So hopefully you can read my handwriting. I wrote skill on the bottom arrow down here and enjoyment going up the side. I think there's a continuum here. So if you look at these, skill increases as you move this way, Enjoyment increases as you move up. So this is a graph kind of like from math. And ultimately, I think sight words kind of fall in the low skill, low enjoyment category because nobody ever really enjoys memorizing stacks of flashcards, right? So that's probably pretty low enjoyment. And then also ultimately, we're not really teaching our kids when we're memorizing flashcards with them. We're not really teaching them the skills that they need in order to learn how to read. So that is low skill, low enjoyment. Allison says agree. Yeah. Lorena says, I did sight words with phonics. Oh, perfect. Yeah, Lorena, that's what you want to do. There is a place for learning sight words, and there is a very distinct method for how to do that in a way that helps our kids not guess. I'm working on some training to be able to help you be able to do that, and that will be coming hopefully real soon. But for now, just like using sight words as your only method or memorizing as your only method is what I'm talking about here. So I'm not talking about using a phonics-based method to teach sight words in the context of a phonics program. This is like just straight up memorizing the cards as your whole reading strategy. Yeah, thanks for that. That's good to clarify. Okay. So if you've heard about the reading wars, this is where the reading wars come in, because there are some people that say that this skill piece is the most important part and that we should really, really, really be teaching our kids to read using phonics, and that it really doesn't matter if they're enjoying the lesson or not, or if they're enjoying what they read or not, because ultimately if they can learn how to read first, then they'll end up enjoying it later because they'll be good at it, and the point is just that we have to teach them those skills, right? Let me know in the comments if you have heard that argument. I know it's out there. And then on the other side, we have the whole word method. And we have the people that say that reading is supposed to be enjoyable, and that if kids aren't enjoying it, they're never going to want to do it. And that it doesn't matter if they can do it unless they can enjoy it. And so we need to teach them to read using books that are exciting and interesting, and we need them to be able to enjoy it. And that's where the whole word method comes in. Let me know in the comments if you guys have heard those two arguments. So those two kind of sides of the coin are the reading wars that are happening right now, and that have been happening over the last several decades as people try to figure out this process of teaching kids how to read. So the next big main reading strategy is this whole language. This is the piece where they say, let's see here, whole language. I'm going to write first because it's hard to write and talk. There we go. Okay. So whole language right here is the next one, and this is where we're teaching our kids that, you know, ultimately it's important to enjoy the book that they're reading. And so we teach them with really fun books that have lots of pictures and lots of interesting story. And if that means that they can't read all the words and they have to guess some of them, then that's okay. We'll just teach them some guessing strategies because we really want them to be able to enjoy these really exciting, really engaging books. And so they might really love reading, but they are really struggling to do it. So engagement is high, enjoyment is high, but skill still is low in these resources. So whole language would be books like this one. I think I've shared this before. The leveled books that have the letter on them. This is a level A book, and they have the really super repetitive text. The kitten is in the grass, the kitten is in the flowers, and the point is that the kid is supposed to memorize the kitten is in the, because it happens on every page, and then they're supposed to look at the picture and guess what that last word is, and then they're able to read the book by doing that. Or we also have the My First Reading books, or the I Can Read books. This one is Pete the Cat, Sir Pete the Brave. We absolutely love Pete the Cat in our house. I am not saying anything at all bad about Pete the Cat, except that it says that this book is ideal for sharing with emergent readers on the back cover. Can you see that? My First Reader is ideal for sharing with emergent readers. So that means it's going to be the very first one that you want to have them read. But it's got, let's see here. Here we go. It's got text like this. On this particular page it says, one night while Lady Callie plays beautifully, someone casts a spell. So not probably a page of text that's going to be super good for somebody who's just learning how to read, not one that they'll be able to sound out for sure. So that is the whole language method. Whoops, there's my pen. Okay, that is the whole language method, and again, another challenge when teaching kids how to read. Okay, so here is where I went wrong, and this is where phonics comes in. So in the Reading Wars situation, the phonics method says the most important thing is to teach our kids how to read. We need them to be able to have that skill. And ultimately, it really doesn't matter if they enjoy it as much, because once they can read, then we can start to add the enjoyment piece in. And so this is where I started with my kids. I started down here in this box working on phonics. And I knew that it was important to be able to teach my oldest these skills, and so we started working on them, but there was not a whole lot of enjoyment at all that happened. We were reading words, we were learning sounds, and then we were putting it together in like these one-page kind of like story-ish sort of things that were just not very interesting, honestly. And so he was having a hard time seeing how anything that we were doing was ever going to relate to him actually being able to read. I don't think he was making that connection at all. And so could he read? Yes. Was he enjoying it? No. And so there was still really something missing here. And this was the struggle that we had that I really regret when we started teaching him, because we were doing the phonics, we were doing all of the interesting things, but all of the things that he needed to learn how to read, but we were doing nothing to make it interesting or to make him want to read. And so there was a lot of frustration, there was a lot of discouragement and struggle over reading because he didn't want to practice, because he didn't like it, because there was really nothing to like. Like our main goal was that he would be able to read a whole bunch of words off of a list, which who cares, right? He didn't care if he could do that or not. And so it wasn't worth the struggle for him. It wasn't worth the struggle of trying to learn in order to get the reward of being able to read a whole bunch of words off of a list. He didn't care. And I think that's something that's really super common with the phonics method. So that was why I created Reading Better Together, and that's where it comes in. So Reading Better Together, I think, is a good combination of the good from phonics plus the good from the whole language method, because with the side-by-side storybooks, kids are getting not only the skill that comes from the phonics lessons, but also the enjoyment that comes from reading a book that has a plot and a cover and pages and an engaging story. And so that is what really, I think, sets Reading Better Together apart from other phonics programs and also from other reading programs, is that it includes not only the skill piece, but also the engagement piece. And now that I am teaching my daughter how to read, I'm noticing a really big difference with her, because I'm not seeing the resistance and the struggle and the frustration that my son had just because he wasn't engaged in what it was that he was learning. So that was probably the other really big mistake that I made with my son, was just not making it interesting and not showing him what it was that we were working towards. There is something to be said for having your child read a book that has a cover and pages as soon as possible when you're teaching them how to read. So whether you're using Reading Better Together or a different program, I definitely recommend this. Either take the story that they give you and cut it up and put it in, like staple it together in pages or something, or find a book that has words, only words that your child knows, and read it side by side, or do something to make the process of reading connect with what you're doing in those lessons. Make sure that your child knows and sees that what you're doing in those reading lessons is going to connect to them being able to read those books that they love. That is something that I wish I had done with my son, and something that I am so glad that I'm doing with my daughter. The other big mistake that I wanted to mention as a part of this Facebook Live today was that when I was working with my son, I did not have community or support for teaching him how to read. And I think this is something that is super common for us as homeschool parents. We often will try to go it alone when it comes to homeschooling. And you can let me know in the comments if you have somebody that you talk to about homeschooling, or that you can go to ask questions, or somebody maybe like an older friend or a mentor or somebody that you can get support from, or not. Let me know. But I think this is really super common for us. We try to go it alone. We feel like we need to be able to do all the things. We need to be able to be all things to our kids, and we don't have the help and support. And this was definitely the case when I was teaching my son. When it started to get difficult and when he started to get frustrated because he just wasn't seeing that connection and he didn't want to do it. I didn't have anywhere to turn. I didn't have somebody to ask. I didn't have somebody else who had walked through this before me to be able to bounce ideas off of. And so that's another thing that has been really, really important to me as we have been building Reading Better together, is to create the community that I did not have, and to be available to all of the moms who are using the curriculum to answer questions, to provide support. The moms get support through email, through the Facebook group, to be able to ask questions and to be able to get help as they're going through the curriculum. And I think that that is so important. It's so important to reach out and find somebody who can be a mentor to you and an encouragement to you as you are teaching your child. So if I had to go back and do it again with my oldest, that would be what I would do. I would definitely seek out somebody who had some more experience than I did and be able to get some support from them. And I would also I would make sure that I had some resources that were more engaging and fun. So I hope that this has been helpful and interesting in giving you some ideas about what to do when you're teaching your child to read and what not to do. And I hope that you can learn from my mistakes and do better than I did, because ultimately I want that for your kids. I want your kids to be able to learn vicariously through mine and not have to go through the struggle and frustration that my son did. Allison says, so glad we found you. Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks, Allison. I'm so glad that I'm honored to be able to help you. That is one of the coolest parts of my life, is just that I get to come alongside Allison and other parents who are teaching their kids to read, and that I get to be a part of your reading journey with your child. So thank you for that, Allison, and others who are using the curriculum as well. It really is an honor for me. So if you are interested in learning more about the curriculum, I am going to add a link in the description of the video or in the comments here to where you can grab a sample of the curriculum. It's going to have a side-by-side story that you can read along with your child, and you can see an example of what I've been talking about with making things engaging and fun and really different than other phonics programs. And I would love for you to check that out as well. Yeah, I'm not seeing any other questions, so I think we'll go ahead and end. We are going to be back in the group again at 3 o'clock Eastern next week. And next week, I'm going to be sharing something that I'm really excited about. So we're going to be talking about the 3 keys that you need in order to raise a child who not only is a confident reader, but also a book lover. So I'm going to be talking about 3 keys. I believe that you really need all 3 of them in order to have both, to have a child who not only can read but also loves to read. And so I'm going to be talking about what those 3 keys are and how to help your child learn to read with each of those pieces. And I'm really excited to be back in the group next week to do that. So I hope that you will join me next week at 3 p.m. Eastern, and I hope that you have a wonderful week, and thank you so much for watching. All right, bye everybody.
I hope you enjoyed this video, which was recorded live in the Homeschool Reading Community Group. This is a free Facebook group where I share tips and advice about homeschooling and teaching reading. You'll also find community with other homeschool moms like you, plus freebies, giveaways, parties, and more. I would love for you to join us over at the Homeschool Reading Community. Make sure that you check out the link in the description of this video for all the details.